It's football and other F words, and it's me, Zach Lyons, here, part of the 1045 Zone crew here at the Senior Bowl. Mobile Senior Day Practice number 3 is in the books. As you can see, riding solo again. Had to take Stoney to the urgent care this morning. Not feeling too great. It is nothing serious. No COVID, no flu, no RSV. So we're looking good there. Praying for a speedy recovery that at least he can enjoy the one day off, which is tomorrow on Friday that we have. Of course, we will still have a show at 6 p.m. tomorrow night as well, and you can also hear some more information at 3:20 p.m. when I am on 3HL on 105 The Zone. Later in this show, for all you football data nerds, I sat down with Zebra Technologies. They're the guys that put the tracking pads and the tracking pads and the shoulder pads and in the football, and for not only just the Senior Bowl but also for next gen stats and NFL games. So I got to talk to someone there and dive deep, ask him some questions. Talk about that Dylan Gabriel miles per hour that everybody got wrong. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff as well. But first and foremost, have to thank our sponsors, Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee. They'll give you the most bang for your buck on your trade-in. Any discounts that you qualify for, they will find and they will apply to a new vehicle. And also Mark Spain Real Estate for all your home selling and buying needs. Mark Spain Real Estate, Nashville, Tennessee. So, a lot to get to. And I want to hear your all's questions as well. If you have any questions about particular players and everything, I got to see a little bit more today. I kind of wandered around because a lot of players left early, and surprisingly enough, I was very surprised by 2 people still playing today. Really 3. Heck, I could maybe even extend that to 5 based on the entire week. Let's start with this. Gray Zabel, right? All you have heard the last 2 days is how much money Gray Zabel has made. He continued to play today. That says a lot about him. Maybe teams are really going to enjoy that. Jack Beck, which I've heard that his name may be Jack Besh. I have not done an investigation into this, but I've heard a lot of people call him Besh. It's Bech, so I don't know how they get there, but supposedly that may be true. So I'll have to do some research on that. But he continued to play today. Elijah Arroyo continued to play today. Anthony Belton, who had a pretty damn good couple of days. Josh Connerly. All those guys kind of kept on going. Brew McCoy, weirdly not there today. Omar Norman Lott came back today. So a lot of moving parts. And a couple of new people showed up. Kobe Hudson, a UCF Florida wide receiver, came in and replaced Brew McCoy. And I thought that was very interesting. Of course, Shamar Stewart, Donovan Uzuraku, and a few other guys like Mike Green. A lot of pass rushers kind of left as well. So I guess let's start off the top row because everybody wants to talk quarterbacks. And I think Eddie brings up a good question in the YouTube chat. Eddie is probably, I don't know, fan number 1 right now, fan rankings number 1 for old Zach Lyons here. What's your opinion on Dart, Zach? You disagree with the national guys claiming he's played his way into the first round. And I know what he's talking about, right? I've seen it clipped off and seen it talked about on the Titans Twitterverse about Charles Robinson recently on his weekly spot on 102.5. And he's saying that personnel people love Jackson Dart. And maybe that is true, right? So here's ultimately, and we'll get more to the Dart discussion, but here's ultimately how you need to view the quarterback performances here at the Senior Bowl. I've been here 3 years now, and nothing is what it seems with the quarterbacks. I don't know what it is about Mobile. I don't know if they eat bad seafood, if they just have a hard time adjusting to what the NFL is asking them in a short span of days. Because out of all the positions probably here, quarterback is asked to adjust the most, in my opinion, because it is how you play quarterback in college is so drastically different than how you play quarterback in the NFL. So what they are being asked to do is a much tougher adjustment. So if you go and look at guys like Jackson Dart, or think of this, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. last year. They weren't that good, but their tape says something different. And so they still got drafted in the first round. Jackson Dart's tape does not scream first round talent. Jackson Dart's week does not scream first round talent. Jalen Milroe's tape, passing, does not suggest first round talent. His week does not suggest first round talent. Now, Jalen Milroe had a bad last 2 days, had a pretty good day today. He layered in some throws, he hit a deep shot. Wasn't a perfect day, but it was by far his best day. So, in my mind, I look at these guys and I'm like, man, they're agents doing the Lord's work right now, especially Jackson Dart's agent for it to suggest. I've seen people write, and it was kind of like passed around at someone, and I cannot remember who. Someone had said that Jackson Dart has had a great week, and he's played himself into the conversation. And he's much closer to quarterback 2 than he is quarterback 4. And that got kind of passed around in the stands. You heard a couple of people talk about it and everything, and they were getting laughed at. Like that is not the same. And I just not to say that he was terrible. It wasn't by far the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen at the Senior Bowl in these last 3 years. But to say that he's closer to Shadur Sanders than he is to, I guess, Will Howard or Kyle McCord, yeah, that ain't true. Not based off what you've seen down here. And if that's what it is, then there you go. um, you know, Jackson Dart can make all the throws, and he made all the throws here. He had a hard time adjusting to the under center stuff. Not surprised. When you're not asked to do something a lot and you have to do it for the first time on repeat, it's going to take a while for you to get. I just don't think he wowed anybody. And maybe the NFL teams feel differently, but I don't know how us in the stands and would suggest that anything other than he was fine. To be honest, the person there's and listen, it doesn't mean anything for their draft stocks or quarterback rankings or anything much, I would say. But Tyler Shook and Seth Hennigan were the 2 best quarterbacks from each team. And they were the most consistent. They made all the throws. They made some nice layered throws. They had some nice spin, some power. Seth Hennigan was really decisive off his play action passes today. I mean, he was super quick processing, having his back turned to the target in a play action and immediately turning around and throwing it and hitting it dead on. Shook makes all the throws. He looks like an NFL prospect. He looks like an NFL quarterback. I saw that Lance Reddick today. I believe it was him. I'm thinking Lewis Reddick said it today, and I'm pretty sure it's him. Lance Reddick is an actor. Lewis Reddick said today that he thinks that Tyler could start in a McVay offense. That's a little much. Like that's going a little bit beyond, I think, the normal analysis that you could provide. But he does make all the throws, and he does look like he's been in a pro system, and he had the easiest adjustment from college to pros so far in this week. So, and Seth Hennigan, who's been a 4-year starter, looks every bit as a 4-year starter. And like I said, he looked very decisive today. Now, listen, none of these guys were perfect. But if you're talking about who made a bigger positive impression, I would say it'd have to be Tyler and Seth. You want to know who hurt their stock the most? I don't know. In my opinion, probably Dylan Gabriel and Jalen. But I can't discount, because I set up here a couple of days ago and said Thursday you should see a lot of improvement. And I think we saw some improvement from Jalen Milroe. He looked a little comfortable than he had the previous 2 days. He was able to make a couple of throws. He was comfortable under center. Wasn't perfect, but I do think that a throw that will go under the radar is this over the middle layered throw where he just easily puts it right over the linebacker into the running back's hands. So while this quarterback class did not yield a quarterback 3, I'm sure that some people will still think that Jackson Dart is quarterback 3. I still got to go finish my tape study on Kyle McCord and Will Howard, because I've only watched Will Howard in the college football playoffs in the Michigan game and the Penn State game earlier in the year. I've watched Kyle McCord against Cam Ward, so that's all I've seen. So I need to go back and finish their tape study. But from what I've seen of them, I would have to think that they would probably be a little bit more NFL ready based on especially what we've seen from the Shrine Bowl. Maybe, we'll catch some Shrine Bowl tonight on the NFL Network. I would have to think that they're probably going to be a little bit more NFL ready than Jackson Dart. And that's kind of where I was with there. Now, listen, all these quarterbacks, I think, showed good leadership for the most part. I mean, I didn't really see much from Elgersma, the Canadian Cannon, but all of them showed leadership, excitement, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think that is going to be, I guess you would say, that big of an issue out of any of these guys. But at some point, talent's got to matter, and I just don't know. Like, I was really hoping for a lot of progression from Jackson Dart, and I do not think he met the expectations. And I didn't set like crazy, insane high expectations. I just don't think that he rose to the occasion this week. But it's 3 weeks or it's 3 days, right? Like, you're cramming a lot in 3 days. So you just got to keep in mind that on the instance of quarterback. Let's get into the national team. So the first team that goes, this is the Taylor Elgersma crew with him, Dylan Gabriel, and also Tyler Shook. But I want to get to the other players that played. And we're strictly talking day 3 right now. Tomorrow show will be about, talking about the entire week and then also previewing the game. So I just want to talk about these players as far as today. So I should have took a cough drop before I got on. Anthony Belton. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me say his name, but dude's just good. I mean, you talk about two guys that probably the NFL world is really high on after this week is going to be Anthony Belton and Arianta Ursley from Minnesota. But Anthony Belton, the tackle from North Carolina State, he was great in the run game. He owned Landon Jackson all day, specifically in a one-on-one, but he also did in the run game as well. Landon Jackson was kind of easily washed out of the run game on a few plays. But I look at what Anthony Belton has put together all week. He's got the size, he's got the quick feet, he's got the attitude. There were some concerns because he spit on a player in college, and he had to transfer to North Carolina State. Everything that we saw this week looked like a guy that was coachable and ready to play day one in the NFL. I think that is a dude that has just been one of the more consistent performers, and I don't think he makes it out of the second round. And I wouldn't be surprised because we kind of talked about this with Stoney the other day. There's the quarterback draft, but I think there's starting to be something called the tackle draft, where there's the NFL draft, and then there's the draft within the draft, so the quarterback draft, and then I think there's another one, the tackle draft. And he could, because we didn't see Armand Mimbu this week, right? That was a big guy that we wanted everybody to see. And again, film is king. And Anthony Belton does have good film. I do think that Anthony Belton is a guy that can probably make his way to where he's a borderline first when it's all said and done. I tell you a guy who showed up the last 2 days, and I mentioned him yesterday, LaQuint Allen Jr., the running back out of Syracuse. There is a play in 7-on-7 in the red zone where he is just like, okay, for your Ted Lasso fans, when Jamie is doing, the I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here. Well, he was doing that to try and actually get throwing the ball, though. He was wide open on his routes. He's a natural pass catcher. Again, the Tennessee Titans probably don't need a guy of his size, build, and skill set. But for another team, LaQuint Allen Jr. is a running back that is going to be kind of your Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard complement back that you should be using in the red zone when you get down there, because he gets open with his route running. It's pretty amazing what he does. In that same play, by the way, Elgersma did not go to him. He missed whoever he threw it to. I forgot who he missed in that 7-on-7 red zone drill. Also, Xavier Restrepo, fantastic day. The Xavier Restrepo that we have been waiting to see on a consistent basis, play in and play out, showed up today. And he also was open due to his route running as well, right in the back of the end zone. And Elgersma, again, does not throw it to him. So he had 2 easy touchdowns to throw to, and Elgersma decided not to. But Xavier Restrepo had a fantastic day. Also on that, Xavier Restrepo is just getting open a bunch of different ways, and today was just a phenomenal day. Like, that put concerns I had about his athleticism to rest. Now, he still probably needs to test well at the combine, but I don't think it's as big. Like, these last 2 days had me a little concerned about the Restrepo train I was on, and I'm glad I never jumped off and I stayed on it, because I think that he is going to look pretty good in the NFL. I mean, he wins with his route running as well. And of course, you have guys like your Tez Johnson that he just gets open. Like, I I don't know what more you can say about the dude. I mean, he's got over 2,000 yards receiving in Oregon over the last 2 years. Um, he basically made Evan Stewart stay in school because he became the focal point of the offense. He gets open with his quick feet. He gets open with stacking up and setting up his routes very well. And then he has the speed on top of it. Again, I know a stretched out Tank Dell is what someone called him today. I believe is Matt Miller on Twitter. But a stretched out Tank Dell, I mean, I'll take Tank Dell all day long. Uh, but going into this, I do want to talk about a few people that I haven't really talked about this week. Harold Fannin Jr., very weird week. He's not what I was expecting. He had a few bad drops, and because I was kind of expecting the week that Elijah Arroyo had, right? Like, I mean, Elijah Arroyo was automatic, active in the pass game, caught a bunch of touchdowns, made everyone look ridiculous because of his athleticism, and that's what we heard about Harold Fannin Jr. And I'm not saying that he technically had a bad week, but when I went back through the tape today when I got home, the best rep of his was a run blocking rep. And that's fine. I mean, that's great. And I've heard Stoney talk about that he stood up, Josiah Stewart earlier this week in the pass blocking. I've heard a lot of good things about his blocking, but didn't hear a lot of good things about his pass catching. And I felt like he was a guy that and he's the tight end from Bowling Green, and he made 2 people look better. Well, he made one person look better, but someone else on the other play made something else. But that didn't make sense, but it'll make sense later. But I do think that Fanning in the run blocking game really showed out. But I was very disappointed because this is a really deep tight end group. And again, you're probably gonna have to go back to the tape for him. But when you're from Bowling Green and you come to this kind of showcase, you need to show up a little bit more consistently in what you were allotted for, which was his athleticism and ability in the pass game. Doesn't mean anything, right? It's just a nugget to put away when you're doing your draft evaluation process, that he actually had a better week as a blocker, which is something that you weren't expecting. A safety that kept popping up, and he popped up on tape study when I came back in, was Jonas Sanker, safety out of Virginia. He was able to make plays on Harold Fanning Jr., who's almost double his size, but he also was able to run with Restrepo in the end zone in red zone drills and stay sticky on him, which, like I said today, Restrepo had his best day of the week, but Sanker had probably his worst rep, and I say worst in quotation marks, that he is kind of a poorly thrown ball too, but Sanker would have been able to make the play regardless. But Jonas Sanker was pretty sticky in coverage, and he showed up in the run game and run defense and everything. So he was a guy that I'm going to be putting on my radar, kind of like a Senior Bowl spotlight, if you will. And then I talked about the Maxon Hooker from Toledo yesterday, and I need to talk about Darius Alexander Toledo. He's the defensive lineman, and he was making plays. I mean, he was everywhere. He had sacks on Taylor Elgersma. He was pushing people around. That dude has been making plays all week. I've talked to a few people about his week, and they all said that he was a name that was kind of getting buzzy all throughout the week, just generating all this buzz. And you look at him, here's what Daniel Jeremiah had to say. He goes, I'm featuring a former Toledo Rocket on this list, and this list is his 2025 Senior Bowl top 12 standouts from week of practice. He says, for the second year in a row, after Alexander followed up Quinyon Mitchell's standout Super Bowl performance in 2024, Senior Bowl performance in 2024 with a strong showing of his own in 2025. Alexander flashed every day in practice this week. His combination of size and athleticism is really impressive. He has long arms, 34 inches, and there's a rangy interior defensive lineman. His body type reminds me of Chiefs All-Pro defensive tackle Chris Jones. Again, obviously the Tennessee Titans aren't necessarily in a need for that position. And maybe Darius Alexander is not going to be there in the fourth round. But if he is there in the fourth round, I would be all over it. I mean, you can't have enough pass rushers or rangy linemen to get after the quarterback because this team has not had an ability to get after the quarterback. Another safety that popped up today was Trey Rucker from Oklahoma State. He had a pretty good rep against Xavier Restrepo in the end zone as well. It was in 7-on-7s. I think the quarterback could have completed it on him, but I liked his mirroring ability. It's the first time I really noticed him this week, so it's just someone to put on your radar. Elijah Arroyo, I mean, what? That dude's just good. Today, he caught a touchdown. I couldn't believe that he was practicing. And today, he caught a touchdown, and after he caught it, he punted the ball into the stands, and he caught it on Sebastian Castro, who was the Iowa safety. Castro didn't have a chance in hell. He had no prayer on this earth to be able to stop that touchdown from happening because he had bad technique, obviously, but, I mean, he was unstoppable. Arroyo was totally unstoppable this whole entire week. Okay, other than that, that's your national team preview. I'll get to the American team preview here in just a second, but first I want to thank our sponsors, Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Drive a little, save a lot. Family-owned car dealership down in Lewisburg, just 45 minutes south of Nashville. If you go down there, they'll make sure to give you the most bang for your buck and give you all the discounts that you qualify for if you're buying a new vehicle. And if they don't have it, they'll go find it. That's Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee. And then, of course, Mark Spain Real Estate, #1 real estate brokerage in Nashville. They're awesome. They're amazing. Make sure that you go find them, seek them out, seek their help out with any of your home real estate needs. Let's see here. I'm just kind of looking around. Not a position of need at all, but could you see us trading Big Jeff and getting Deion Walker in the later rounds? And Buston says that he has no idea where he's projected at this point, to be honest. So I look at it this way. I kind of toyed with that idea, Buston, earlier, but I don't think Deion Walker really showed me enough that I would be comfortable doing that. From what I've heard around here, the Senior Bowl scuttlebutt, if you will, is that I don't think Big Jeff's going anywhere. It would be, I would say, a surprise if he is, but if he is gone, they're getting something tremendous back in value. So someone would have to be seriously overpaying to pry Big Jeff away from their fingers. Of course, Big Jeff was rumored on the trade block last year. This past season during the trade deadline. I know that Minnesota was sniffing around. No deal could come. I don't think that that's going to be a situation. Though now that I just said Minnesota, what they tagged Sam Darnold, and they do some weird trade for Big Jeff with Sam Darnold or something. I don't know. Just kind of trailed off there. But as far as what I've heard this weekend, I would not expect Big Jeff to go anywhere. I think that with what they are looking for from their defenders, Big Jeff is one of those guys that you could tell him once what to do, and he'll do it. And they need more of those kinds of defenders on this team. So while I am a big proponent, if you're going to do a rebuild, do a rebuild. I think they consider Big Jeff to be part of that rebuild, barring some crazy, insane trade offer. But Deion Walker is not the guy that I would likely replace him with, even though there could be something there. He was very streaky this week, and he was very streaky in Kentucky his final season before entering the draft. Other than that, okay, no other questions. Yes, I guess I should answer this one. Roger Bedell says, "Is that your family, Lions Ford?" Yes, it is. It is my father's company, so a little bit of nepotism right there and all that kind of stuff. But at least you know that at least I do vouch for them, and that's hard to find in the car world. Okay, so the American team. So we already talked about the quarterbacks and everything. I do want to talk about Marcus Yarns and Devin Neal. They just continue to pop every day. Again, Tennessee Titans definitely don't need to be drafting a running back high, but there is no reason not to draft a running back in the 6th or 7th or an undrafted free agent if you find one. Those guys probably will not be that, but they've made themselves a lot of money this week. I tell you a guy that I want to talk about, Isaac Tesla. He's the Arkansas wide receiver. He was a late addition to this group. And the reason I want to bring him up and give him some love is because he's likely not going to get drafted. And there's probably quite a few wide receivers that aren't likely to get drafted. But that dude showed up. He played, did everything asked of him. He ran all kinds of routes. He won all kinds of he got all kinds of touchdowns. He got open quite a bit. And again, he comes from Arkansas. The tape, they're a running team and all this kind of stuff. But there may be some special teams value there if you're a team, but you're going to get someone that's coming in to prove something. And sometimes when you get someone that wants to prove something, they can make things happen. So I think that, Isaac Tesla is a guy that deserves some credit to come out here last minute and really when you're talking about it being a group from Kobe Hudson, Isaac Tesla, Jamal Pritchett, Jack Besh, Kamir Dyke, Ty Felton, Arian Smith, Brew McCoy, and Jalen Royals. I mean, Isaac Tesla really was probably the 3rd or 4th best wide receiver out of that group on a consistent day-to-day basis, and he showed up again today. I like Team Ramrod's thing. I hear he's electrifying. I love that play, that pun on his name. But I really do think that Isaac Tesla just deserves love. I don't think that he's a draftable player per se, but I do think that sometimes when you come down here and you show out like you show out, you got to get some credit. Give some credit where it's due, for sure. Jalen Royals, tough day today. I have a video of him basically boogie boarding after losing a rep, in the back of the end zone. There's something about his build that I like, but people think that he's a little too top heavy. So I was talking to someone today that interviewed him in Iron City Film. Drew, we were talking about him a couple days ago, and he told Drew in his interview that he was playing at 80 or practicing at 80% this week. Not effort wise, by the way, just that his health from whenever he got injured during the college season, he's only at 80%. I see Bustin says Royals feels like Traylon 2.0. I would almost say Taywan Taylor 2.0 just because of how he's built. I just didn't see it this week, and especially today. So he's a guy I'm going to watch more of, but I wouldn't go around saying that he had the best week. I know a lot of people have said that. I just don't think he has. Um, I will say Kymir Dyke had a really good day today. Ty Felton has been consistent all week. I tell you, Arian Smith. Now, if you remember last year, I talked a lot about Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. Now, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, also from Georgia, like Arian Smith, except for they are on two opposite ends of the drop spectrum. I don't think Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint even had a drop in college, and all Arian Smith does is drop balls. And today he had a fantastic day, and he's had a good day in his release packages, his get off, his use of strength and leverage. But he had two big back-to-back drops yesterday, and I couldn't get those out of my mind. But today, I'm like, okay, I see it. Like, he could be a late round steal if you have a wide receiver coach, and the Tennessee Titans do. They have one that is very experienced, but he needs to have a proven track record of being able to fix drops because Arian Smith is going to have to be on a jugs machine constantly. You're going to have him on that jugs machine. And that's something that Taywan Taylor didn't really want to do. And just to bring him back up again. And so this guy needs to be on that jugs machine. But if he's on it and he can get those drop issues corrected or at least lessen, you may have a pretty good steal on the draft. Um, Jack Betch, just real quick, or Beck, we haven't figured that out yet. If he is there at 33 or 32, 35 in the second round, he's somehow still there. Tennessee Titans would be crazy not to draft him. I mean, at this point, he's shown that he can do it all. And it does not matter. He can make every kind of catch. He can climb the ladder. He may not be super athletic, but he's athletic enough. But that dude can body everybody. I get a little worried. I may be seeing a little. Maybe I'm getting drunk off the JJ Arcega-Whiteside again because I thought that JJW was going to be something, but this dude just balls. It didn't matter who was on him. It didn't matter what route you asked him to do. It didn't matter at all. That guy catches balls. And I think that they'd be crazy not to draft him with their need a wide receiver currently. He could be your T. Higgins, right? Okay, so like that, that may be a really good comp. He could be your T. Higgins jump ball contested catch guy because that guy can do it. I think he goes in the first round. By the way, it would be very hard. I have to see how he, I guess, tests at the combine. But that dude balls. I mean, it was something. And listen, I don't think that's. I see a lot of people say that high. I don't think that's going to end up being the case by the time it rolls around. I think it's going to look more like a value pick than anything else. I know that currently sometimes he's not even there in mock drafts, but I think at the end of the day, I don't think it will be as high as what people think. So if you go and look at the NFL mock draft database and let's go to their consensus big boards right now. Now these obviously haven't been probably updated in a while, but let's go to the wide receivers. So their website sucks. So wow, they're way lower. So apparently the consensus is way lower on him than what PFF is. Because I know PFF has him in the high second round. Let me say something. What they have from him right now as a fourth round draft pick, that ain't true. That's wrong. There's a lot of big boards that are apparently wrong and need to reevaluate how they watch film because he would never have been a fourth round anyway off any kind of consensus. He is definitely, in my mind, always been a second round pick. So that's kind of crazy. Landon Fowler asks, how did Jalen Noel do today? I'm glad you brought him up because I forgot to bring him up. He was tremendous. Again, that's a guy that's probably in that same second round, and if they came away with him in the second round, I'm all in. I'm comfortable with that. If you're looking for a guy that has inside out flexibility, but he's mainly inside, Jalen Noel's your guy. He could be a little bit of like a Jordan Addison type deal, but I love what I've seen from Jalen Noel. And I think PFF has been right on all these wide receivers. They were really high on Jake Besh. They were really high on Jalen Noel, and I think that's the way they showed it this week. They proved PFF right. um, yeah, I think Arroyo at this point gets drafted in the second. I really do. I mean, he did that much this week. I thought he was already going to be good as well. He was good down in Miami. I think he goes in the second. Okay, safeties. From this particular group that I'm talking about right now, Caleb Ransall kind of showed up a little bit, and so did Hunter Warler from Wisconsin. Caleb Ransall's from Tulane. Billy Bowman showed up again in bad ways. He's just too handsy. He gets a lot of penalties called on him because he gets beat a lot. And I look at from the first group, the national group. I'd already pointed out at one point. Where are they at? Trey Rucker, Jonas Sanker, and Maxon Hook have all had good weeks. So there's a couple of good safeties there as well. Going to, did want to talk about just real quick the linebacker from Oregon, Jeffrey Bassa. He had a good week this week. Very vocal. We'll see what the safeties and linebackers do at the Senior Bowl. That's when you saw the real ones separate themselves from everybody. So we'll check back in on Saturday evening on that question. Just real quick, CJ from the tight end from Alabama, he had a really good week. It's quiet. It's a quiet week, I think, compared to guys like when you have Mason Taylor, Jake Brennenstuhl, and then of course Elijah Arroyo in the other group. But he did some stuff. He got some DBs flat-footed and caught him and went deep for some touchdowns and stuff like that. Just to wrap things up before I toss it over, Emory Jones today had a really good rep against Cameron Jackson. I believe it was him. RJ Oben. And RJ Oben has had a really good week. Edge from Notre Dame. RJ Oben had a really good week, but Emory Jones got him some on there. They played him at right tackle today. I will say this. I didn't notice Carson Vincent and Clay Webb. That may be a good thing, though, if you don't notice them today. I tell you a guy that I noticed, and I just can't get enough of him, and I don't think it's going to work in the NFL, 5'10 center. Willie Lampkin out of North Carolina. That dude just doesn't give a fuck. That's the best way to put it. He doesn't give a fuck that he is 5'10 and looks like a bowling ball and should probably be a fullback. At this point, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do with him in the NFL besides maybe fullback, but like he is what Vrabel thought Aaron Brewer was. Like Willie Lampkin is actually just a feisty son of a bitch is the best way to put it. I will say that I thought RJ Oben closed out a pretty strong week. Jared Ivey did not. Princely, I don't feel like Princely was there. That's about all I can say. I thought Omar Norman Lott had a good week after missing yesterday. He bounced back today. I'm interested to see what he does in the game on Sunday. And, of course, Walter Nolan has just been consistent all week. Other than that, so tomorrow we'll do our preview show and everything for the our full week review, our preview show for the game on Saturday. And then, of course, we'll be after the game, live after the game, me and Stoney, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the press conference booth, live after the game. And so I'm going to close out the show. You'll see me again. But I'm going to close out the show with our last big segment is I interviewed Dominic Russo, who works for Zebra MotionWorks, who they're the people that have the technology and have the tracking data that go into the shoulder pads of NFL players and the Senior Bowl and also has the tracker and the ball. So I ask him questions about the Buffalo Bills, about next gen stats, how they arrive at all this stuff, what's next for Zebra Technologies, and what is actually good information to provide you guys based on their tracking data here at the Senior Bowl about these players. So this is my interview with Dominic Russo of Zebra Technologies. Hey, it's Zach Lyons. I'm here with Dominic Russo of Zebra Technologies and Senior Bowl data tracker, I guess, analyst tracker. I mean, how do you want to describe what Zebra MotionWorks does?
Yeah, so we're specifically for the Senior Bowl, we're the on-field player tracking provider for the Senior Bowl. So we're collecting all the metrics that the players are accumulating during practice. They'll wear 2 tags that essentially look like this. They weigh about 3 grams. Each player will have a chip tag, call it interchangeable, what you call it, and there'll be one in each shoulder pad right underneath the epaulette, right on the top. So each player will wear one of those, and from that you can get things speed, distance, acceleration. You can start getting things, how far are players from each other, so to get things like separation, a little bit more advanced things like that. Also a chip in the football, which looks like this here. Also the same thing, weighs about 3 grams. We work in conjunction with Wilson to get this built inside the football, and that could track things like initial airspeed, initial rotation out of the hand, how far the ball travels in the air, how long it's in the air. So we've been tracking that here at the Senior Bowl since 2018. So we have quite a database now of players going back.
And do y'all only do the Senior Bowl, or do y'all do other NFL events and all that kind of stuff?
Right. So I could talk more about that. So we're the official on-field player tracking provider for the Senior Bowl. Like I said, been doing that since 2018, and we're also the official on-field player tracking provider for the NFL, which I've had a partnership with them since 2014. So anytime you see next-gen stats, which you'll commonly see on Thursday night games, Sunday night games, we're the one that's ultimately giving that data, and the NFL is turning that into the next-gen stats. So we're giving them that underlying data, the XY location tracking data.
So how many times have you been asked this week, because I know you've done a couple of interviews now, been asked about the Buffalo Bills first down issue?
It comes up every once in a while.
Yeah, every once in a while. So my question is that I read somewhere that one of the issues is that the tracker is only in the middle of the ball, and that may not necessarily give you an exact location of where the football could be because of how someone is holding the football when they're trying to cross and all that kind of stuff. So I guess my first question is, how come there's only one sensor and not maybe sensors end to end in some form or fashion?
Right. So yeah, you are correct. There's just one. It's in the middle of the football. Our technology has accuracy up to 6 inches. So you're dealing with that portion there. The other thing is when you're building this within the football, there's obviously lots of testing that needs to be done. When we first started doing the tracking with the NFL, there wasn't a chip in the football, and that eventually came. I believe it was 2017 was the first year that we incorporated the tag in the football. But that had to go through lots of testing. You're working with the football provider. You got to incorporate that into practices, making sure that's not affecting the actual flight of the football. So it's a huge development process in making that work. So obviously we're dedicated to doing whatever we can to help the NFL with those situations, but it's not as easy as just saying, throw more tags in the football. It's much more development and things involved.
But is that maybe where you guys are planning to go next, is try to get involved in the first down situation and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to support the NFL in any way we can in terms of what our data could provide. So definitely something that we'd be interested in. But ultimately, it's not such a black and white solution. It's very gray. You got to find out when the player's knee hits the ground, where's the football, where's it being held, when the whistle was blown. There's just numerous factors that are involved that makes it difficult to rely on just the location technology that we have.
So part of, I assume, with your all's deal with next-gen stats and all that kind of stuff is tracking the sacks metrics allowed, time to sack, I would assume, separation, all that kind of stuff. So I know this is you probably were hoping is more for Senior Bowl, but I'm a big football nerd, so it may go both ways. So when talking about sacks, obviously an offensive lineman allows a sack through his direction. How do you guys fault that it's actually him, the offensive lineman's fault, and not the quarterback who held the ball too long or a coverage sack?
Right. So I think that, you might not be able to decipher just from our stats. And that's one of the important things that I always like to say is having the next gen stats data is great. Having just the general player stat data is great. But being able to combine that with, what you're seeing on film is definitely the best route of being able to combine both of those things. So I know there have been some, I know ESPN ingests the next gen stats data as well, and they try to build modeling based on, I think wind pressure rate is one of the things that they often talk about, being able to quantify using the tracking data with offensive linemen, defensive linemen. But I know that's something that they do. Ultimately, I think some of that stuff you do have to end up still watching the game too to get some of those answers.
Now talking about pass rush win rate, and if this is not your forte, just say, hey, next question. 2.5 seconds seems to be like the delineation of time allowed. Why 2.5 seconds?
Ultimately we provide the data to the NFL, and the NFL, slices that up and does, lots of analysis and data crunching involved in that. So I'm not sure if 2.5 was just
something
a nice even number, why 2.5 and not 2.46. But ultimately, I think that was just a number they came to that fit right. I don't think they're picking an arbitrary number though.
Now you're all separation stats, so obviously you're connecting probably the stuff in the shoulder pads to the closest defender's shoulder pads.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Yeah,
and is that when the time the ball is thrown, or when the time or the separation when the ball is arriving?
You could do it at basically essentially any data point.
Gotcha.
So what we help to provide to the NFL is event data. So they get the location data every 10th of a second, but then they also get event data as well that provides some context. So things such as snap, when the pass is thrown, when the pass arrives, when the pass is caught, when a ball carrier initiates first contact or touched by a defender. So once you have that event data, you can kind of slice it up however you want. So if you want to find separation, as soon as the ball reaches the quarterback's hand, you can get that. If you want separation when the ball arrives, you can get that. If you want separation when the ball is finally caught, you can get that. So you can really slice it and dice it any way that you want. But typically the next gen stats, I know they have it on their public site when they refer to separation. I believe it's the time of arrival.
So a lot was made after the first day of Dillon Gabriel's highest initial airspeed of 74.9.
Yeah.
That's a pretty distinct descriptor, highest initial airspeed. So what is initial airspeed?
Yeah, so initial airspeed is the speed when it initially comes out of the player's hand. So it's going to be different from a radar gun. Saw a lot of things about that, faster than Josh Allen at the combine, which
but it seems like that's measuring two different things, right?
It's measuring two different things. So you're not going to get apples to apples there. Also, there had been other players that have had a higher initial airspeed throw than Gabriel in years past.
And even this year, looking at the stats, just to update the people that are listening, Seth Hennigan currently 76.6, Jalen Milroe 75.4, Dillon Gabriel 74.9, and then Leonard, Dart, and Shuck are all over 70. So they would have all broken the combine Josh Allen thing. So I thought it was different, but it's how far is it once it's out, like out of the hands?
Yeah, right when the tag senses that it's released, it's able to know that.
So that's pretty incredible. That's down to a 10th of a second or something. Is that what you're saying?
The data spits out every 10th of a second.
Gotcha. Looking at on the offensive side of the football, so the max acceleration and max deceleration. Mm-hmm. So, what if I am a guy that's trying to learn what these numbers mean? Mm-hmm. I would say the higher the number of max acceleration is better.
Yeah.
And the lower the number of the max deceleration, because it's negative.
Yeah.
The better.
That's correct. Okay. Yeah. The faster that they could accelerate or decelerate.
And so you guys combine those two things into something you call explosive efforts.
So explosive efforts. So the max acceleration and deceleration is the magnitude, where explosive efforts is essentially requires a count. So in how we calculate it, it needs to trigger in order to account for an explosive effort, which is essentially just the sum of high and medium and high accelerations and decelerations. So that could really change depending on the intensity of the practice.
So just because you maybe don't have a high mile per hour when you're running out here in a straight line or whatever routes you may be running after the catch, this measures, obviously acceleration is burst, but it also measures maybe get off. What do you find that teams gravitate more, the miles per hour to these explosive effort metrics?
Right. I think the mile per hours is the easiest one to make sense of, just because, people are always constantly, how fast someone is. So I think that's the easiest one. Acceleration, deceleration also is a good one, just because you could say, oh man, that guy really could accelerate and decelerate out of his brakes. So I think they both could be used, but I think the speed is the easiest one for people to grasp. I remember I was talking to a scout last year, and he was particularly interested in wanting to know, like, he's able to say, oh, that player has like long speed, or it takes them a while to get there. So using the tracking data, you could get to that and figure out, say, okay, how long does it take for him to get to 20 miles per hour? Does it take him a little bit longer versus another guy who can get to 20 faster? It kind of depends.
You guys keep track of distance traveled by these players. I guess just why? Yeah. It just seems like a random thing.
Yeah. So particularly for the Senior Bowl practices, it's really not as much, not as much insight you're getting there. Just from a fan engagement perspective, I like showing that number just so you could get an idea of how much distance a player is traveling in practice. I think kind of people forget that it's not necessarily just speed and all that stuff. Football is an endurance game as well. So I think being able to see how much a player is traveling during practice is important. We also provide our solution that we do for the Senior Bowl for NFL teams. So we have almost half of the league uses our tracking system for practice, and that's where knowing how much distance a player is covering in practice is important as you're leading up to the game week, where teams can make decisions based on, okay, are we doing a little too much with them? Do we need to have them do a little bit more? And just finding that right balance to have them prepared to play on Sunday.
So would you say that someone with a high explosive starts ranking or number of explosive starts and distance traveled, kind of shows that this guy's a effort endurance kind of guy?
It definitely could categorize effort. That's hard to say. How this guy works hard in practice, where you could have some numbers kind of behind that to see if that makes sense or not. So distance traveled, you could break that into zones. So distance traveled, which we're showing is everything over everything, where you could start breaking that down into, okay, how much is a player doing between 1.5 and 5 miles per hour? How much of a player is doing over 10? And you can really do that breakdown amongst the position groups, amongst the players, and get more context of what's going on in practice.
What's the craziest thing that you guys come up with that you could track but never really, you don't ever really use? Something kind of crazy maybe happened on the field and you're like, oh, well, this guy went over and headbutted 3 people and had this kind of effort or something like.
That's hard. I know with the Senior Bowl, the stuff that's always fun is when someone makes a big play in the game.
Yeah.
And you see everyone run over and celebrate in the end zone. I think one time a guy did a flip, and just seeing that, we have an internal viewer where we can see our dots and see the movement. I think that's always pretty cool to see. Cool. See them have fun with their big plays and all running over. I think that's pretty cool.
So the dots that everybody uses after a play, that's you guys.
That's our underlying data.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So earlier today, I don't know if you noticed, but Elijah Arroyo caught a touchdown and he punted the ball. Did y'all track how far he punted that ball?
So the thing is, and we definitely would be able to get it, but the one thing is we're focused on tracking the quarterbacks, kickers, punters, the ones that are actually doing the throwing and the punting. But if we wanted to get there, we definitely could.
Do y'all track time to throw? I know it's not available on our little badge stuff, but do y'all track time to throw and give that data out here?
It's definitely something that we could provide. But yeah, not something that we show on the site. It's obviously much tougher in a practice environment when you got a billion different throws going all on at once,
and not knowing the assignment,
and not knowing that. So, but that's definitely something that we would be able to be tracked.
Your all's time to throw metric, is that just for that NGS uses, NFL Next Gen Stats? Is that just plays where the pass is thrown, or is that plays on sacks and plays where they scramble as well?
The time to throw, I believe, doesn't incorporate sacks.
Gotcha.
I don't. Yeah, I'm sure they have something that displays hold time or
Gotcha.
Average time to throw kind of keeps that anyways, because the guys that hold the ball longest or will hold on to it longer and then eventually throw it.
So what's next for Zebra?
Yeah, I think continuing to expand on our partnership with the NFL. They've been a great partner in working with us, so always happy to work with them. Continue to work events like the Senior Bowl, and ultimately, I think hopefully doing something in college would be great. There's a huge appetite for this data, and being able to see what the college athletes are doing. They're eventually going to be in the pros. So I think continuing to add that, whether that be at a conference level or something of that nature, continuing to do events like this. We do the Big 12 Pro Day now. Last year was the first conference-wide Pro Day event, so we track that as well. Continuing to do things like the Combine. So I think continuing to work with the NFL in our partnership and see what other opportunities there are to do in other sectors of football.
All right. Dominic, Russo, what was your title? Oh, sorry, cut him off there for a second. Cut him off there for a second, unfortunately, and I just turned myself up too loud and have no clue why that did that. All right, that'll do it for us. Football and Other F Words. Lyons Ford, Lewisburg, Tennessee. Mark Spain Real Estate, real estate brokerage in Nashville. Of course, Lyons Ford. Go and make sure before you buy any kind of new car or pre-owned car that you go and give them a shot to earn your business. Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Other than that, this has been Football and Other F Words, and I'm Zach Lyons. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. And you have just been effed.